This August, the Reverend Billy Talen sent an open letter to the Commissioner of New York City's Department of Parks in which he wrote, quote, "Mitchell Silver and Parks officials, save your souls. Monsanto is the devil," unquote. Now, is the good Reverend being a touch hyperbolic, or is there good reason to fear the chemical the city is spraying all over New York's parks?
Monsanto, as you may know, makes Roundup, essentially a powerful weed killer, and its key ingredient is called glyphosate. There's growing grassroots opposition, or should we call it crabgrass roots opposition, to the use of glyphosate, and here to tell us why they want to see it stopped are Reverend Billy of the Church of Stop Shopping. Reverend Billy, thank you so much for being on BK Live.
You choked on the name of our church, Greg.
Say it again, or we'll talk all about it.
It's because you're such a sinner.
Wow, we could talk about that too.
You don't use Roundup on your lawn, do you?
No, I don't have a lawn. Mitchel Cohen from the No Spray Coalition, and Dragonfly, an activist and member of the Stop Shopping Choir. Krista is also joining us from the Black Institute. Thank you all very much for being here. Why don't we start at the beginning of this issue? Reverend Billy, maybe you could speak to this. What is glyphosate that is found in these products that they're spraying in the parks?
Well, if you were to believe Monsanto's paid scientists and the resulting advertisements and studies that they're constantly flooding the world with, including the media, thank you for having us here today. A lot of the media wouldn't do this. It's a harmless herbicide that doesn't stay in nature very long and disappears and is a benefit for all mankind by getting rid of unwanted weeds.
So they claim.
So that's what they claim. All the scientists that, a percentage of, around 99% of all the scientists who are not in the direct pay of this gigantic corporation are saying, no, glyphosates are carcinogenic. This is a dangerous herbicide. We've got to stop. And now we have multiple countries banning glyphosates completely. France, Brazil, Denmark, Russia, just everybody's pulling out. That's good because our FDA and EPA, our regulators seem to be enthralled to Monsanto, and they're very slow to regulate this poison, this toxin. So we've got to get it out of our parks.
I remember being a young person years ago when they had those commercials and you see the guy come out in his driveway and he's like whoosh, whoosh, with Roundup and he's
Mr. Clean.
Yeah, so this is something that's in not a hazard. This is something that's in a lot of sheds or in garages or under the sink. So is it really just the scale of the thing, of the fact that it would take a lot in parks that makes things off balance, or is the product itself really that carcinogenic or poisonous?
That's what's hard. That's what's hard for a lot of Americans, especially, to wrap their minds around. How could Roundup be the most popular herbicide in the world,
right,
and still have all these bad things reported about it? The World Health Organization, about a couple months ago, just determined that it was probably carcinogenic. So you've got the most mainstream, prestigious health organizations. You've got major countries pulling out, and yet Roundup is something that Americans have on their lawns here in Brooklyn.
Right.
So we have to retrain ourselves. We have to stop believing that just because something's so big that it's good.
So Krista, how is this a black issue?
So when you think about these adverse health effects that glyphosate is linked to, such as asthma, it is linked to both causing and triggering asthma. It is a well-known fact that African American children are 4 to 6 times more likely to have asthma than any other ethnicity. Interestingly as well, the Parks Department will not release records to explain a park-by-park breakdown of how much of this they use. But it would be no surprise to me to find out that they just happen to use more of it in these parks that are closer in proximity to low-income housing closer in proximity to communities of color, as has been found in research from other cities where they were able to obtain records, specifically Tacoma Park, Maryland, where they recently passed a law to ban all cosmetic use pesticides. And so it is a disparate impact to communities of color, as are many issues, but in specifically affecting these kids as well.
Mitchell, you mentioned off the air that this has to do with other chemicals as well. How far does this spread, and where do you come in on the issue?
Well, we're being inundated with chemicals. So it's the glyphosate, Roundup for sure, which they're also using around schools and around parks, on sidewalks. Now we ask, why are they doing that? They used to just weed by hand if you want to get rid of weeds. Weeds are dandelions, very pretty, but they want to get rid of them. So why are they using it? Because the Parks Department has been cut back by 80%. So the workers who used to weed by hand are no longer there. So let's use chemicals. Let's dump the chemicals on. So, and as Krista was saying, in a lot of poor areas especially, but in all areas as well, they put them and they thought it would be good to add a color to them so people could see them when they add glyphosate. So you could see it's either yellow or green all around these parks, right next to schools, on sidewalks.
Amazing.
And so the kids, so you can
Amazing.
imagine what kids do. So instead of the kids saying, oh, let's stay away, say, wow, look at this green. And I've seen in Coney Island, I've seen kids rolling around in it,
Oh, no.
riding their
Oh, no.
bicycles through it, wheelchairs going through it, bringing it into the house. You know, all of that is not even considered in the plans that the New York City government has. And that's only one, but it's a major one. They just revealed that they're using it in Prospect Park for the first time that I ever heard that, just this year. They might have been using it all along, but I hadn't heard that before. So I'm from a group called the No Spray Coalition, and you could go to nospray.org if you want information on all of this, and the pesticides. You can have pyrethroids in the pesticides, which are a known carcinogen, which all of them are made with. There are other chemicals, the neonicotinoids, which are killing all the bumblebees in the world, all over the world. And this is what Dragonfly and sister Dragonfly.
Cite to Dragonfly.
And she's been talking about this and promoting that through music and through art.
Who are these people? Why are they now using it in Prospect Park? And, you know, I just want to know that in general. I mean, let's talk about your art, though, too. What sort of messages have you been putting out there in order to get these people to stop using it in places like Prospect Park?
Well, let's first talk about who are these people. This is actually incredibly personal to me because of who these people are and what they've done. Monsanto has a history with the development of the atomic bomb. Monsanto is responsible for Agent Orange that many people may or may not know. In the Vietnam era, the herbicide caused cancer in people of Vietnam who are still, many generations later, are still suffering from those effects. My father was a combat medic in Korea and Vietnam. Before he crossed over, one of the many illnesses that he had as a result of his military service was prostate cancer. And now I can recall that there is also a bottle of Roundup in our tool shed. The irony is the propaganda and ignorance in the American people not knowing that we are basically paying to kill ourselves. Our tax money is being used basically to poison us and then turn around and commodify it and then make more money off of poisoning us. Agent Orange was only one of a whole rainbow of chemicals.
Dioxins, PCPs.
Exactly. And
bovine growth hormones.
And so what do? They just use the propaganda. They use the popular John Wayne imagery of Roundup. Yeah, let's whoop those weeds in the ass. But it is also a continuation of how the corporatocracy and capitalism does not respect the brown and black body. And I'm talking about planet Earth, not even my body, but notice how it's a very similar issue because it's the same thing. Not seeing and respecting life on Earth as it is. So when you say all lives won't matter until Black lives matter, that includes planet Earth.
So the broader question too is, now that it's made its way to Prospect Park, and I took Prospect Park West to work today, like there's some not so poor people who live on that side of the park. Now that sort of misery is finding company in a higher tax bracket, do you think that's going to move the needle on this at all, where people start to wake up? You know, Park Slope is a stroller derby. No mom is going to want her kids playing in a field of glyphosates.
It's up to us to communicate with all the people who we think are in the blast zone of this dangerous toxin. I live in Windsor.
Do we know where the blast zone is? Is there a sort of defined area where this is a public health issue and people should know right now? Is there a place where we can tell people that
it's
this
hard
is
to
very
know,
likely?
Brian, because the Parks Department, as Krista Carter said, the Parks Department isn't telling us. We know that in the calendar year 2013, there were 1,800 glyphosate spraying events. I think that's as close as we get in terms of, but placement of the events in different parks, and in a big park like Prospect Park, where are you spraying? I caught them spraying on, I think it's called Center Drive, near the Quaker Cemetery.
I wouldn't want to have been caught by you spraying. You probably had something to say.
I preached at them.
Oh, yeah, we do.
But they, the two guys who, it was clear what they were doing. There was a Roundup package right there. They were pouring the Roundup from the package into that big white tank in back with the red triangle toxic signal. And it was all a set piece. There was no question about what it was. And I said, well, a lot of us are against this. And started taking pictures of them.
For you, I mean, we only have a few minutes. Krista, I want to go around. Start with you. We talked about the history of Monsanto, the big corporation that it is. How do people stop what's going on? I mean, like, what are the best ways people can take action against such a large corporation that's, potentially killing people?
Yeah, so I can tell you what we can do as far as the Black Institute, which is what I'm a part of, and where I work. We're actually running a campaign now called Poison Parks to bring more attention to this issue, to get those people in Park Slope, to get these people that live near Marcus Garvey, to get all of the boroughs involved, and so that more people can be aware of these negative health effects, because a lot of it is low exposure over long periods of time. It's not, you don't need to blast it in someone's face to get sick from it. It's this low exposure that you get from walking nearby. It's also affecting pets, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, if you visit our website, I know theblackinstitute.org, we are running a petition now to show council members that your constituents care about this issue. You need to do something about this issue. You need to ban these chemical cosmetic pesticides. They're using them for aesthetic reasons. They're not using them to
Nobody's in danger
of dandelions and clover. That's not hurting anyone. And they're doing it so that things look nice. It's like putting makeup on a pig is kind of what they're doing. We don't really know what's underneath that soil.
Pigs are wonderful.
They really are.
I have to come to the defense of pigs.
Not to speak poorly
Some of
of
my
pigs,
relatives,
but that's
right?
exactly what is happening now. And so what we're trying to do is bring it to a political point, so that way council members, those who have power over the way that things are happening in this city, can act.
Well, we are out of time for this segment, but we know that you guys are going to stick around and people can continue to learn more and hear the message. If you're just trying to absorb it, you can visit theblackinstitute.org to sign that petition and let your council people know.